I'm ODing on coffee today, which is that's a separate issue. But okay, Coach. Hey, thanks for joining me on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. I am super excited to speak with you just because of I'll just say the outstanding accomplishments of your program that I'm truly impressed with. And I have to say, you juggling a newborn, which is why this has taken a while, it makes it all the more impressive, because I remember when I had newborns, like, I was not as spry as I usually was. So thanks for joining me today.
Sure thing.
So I think I got this right. You've been at McDaniel since 2012, correct?
Correct.
Did I get that right? I'm never sure if the site is updated or, and I will say your success has been, I mean, it's it's elite, right? Like you guys are definitely up there. So maybe you could just start with, how did you end up at McDaniel? Like what's your soccer journey been like?
Sure. I played Division III soccer at Bridgewater College down the 81 corridor in Harrisonburg.
Mm-hmm.
It was a second-year program, so a lot different than where I am now. Had a great experience there. Loved the Valley. Ended up getting my master's at James Madison, which is right up the road from Bridgewater, and then was lucky enough to get hired at, I think I was 24, turning 25, at Ferrum College, small school in Southwest Virginia. And so I had the opportunity to learn a lot of maybe what not to do. It took me a little while to figure out the recruiting and the coaching, everything basically. And I was young, and it was a rebuilding program, so it was really a perfect fit for where I was in my career. I was there for 5 seasons, and then this position opened up, and it's my hometown. So Carroll County is where I grew up. My family's here, my sisters, my brother, my parents are all pretty local. And so it was a great opportunity to get into the Centennial as well. It was a part-time position at the time, and so it was a bit of a leap of faith, knowing that, kind of told myself, okay, 2 years, and in 2 years, if we can go full-time, then I'm going to stick around and see what I can do here. If not, at some point, something's got to give. And so lucky enough, we were able to get it to be a full-time position year 3. So I was able to stay here. I mean, my goal was always to coach one of the best teams in the country. And I hoped that McDaniel would be a place that I could do it. But, I took over a rebuilding program, so it was still really unknown. And then I've been able to stay. I didn't have to move to the next, tier to be, where I want to be with the program. So it's been, I've just been, I've always been a head coach. I've never been an assistant coach. So I've had to spend a lot of time learning and talking to people who know so much more than I do, and conventions. And I do a lot of observing the teams. But yeah, it's been a journey, but it's certainly nice to be coaching with my own family around.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense now, because usually I try to connect, like, oh, I understand why, but so now that makes total sense. So you got to McDaniel, and it was qualified as rebuilding, was it?
Yeah, they had, I guess, the 5 years prior only won 3 or 4 games a year, so it was rebuilding.
Wow.
It was rebuilding.
So really, in what now would be going on your 10th year?
This was my
10th, 11th.
This was my 10th season. I call it my 10th season, even though my 9th season didn't exist. But I coached my tail off during COVID, even though we didn't get any wins or losses. So this was my 10th season. So first year, I think you have to look at the stats. I think we won about 7 games, which felt great for the seniors. I had a big senior class, so it was. I thought it told a lot about the program that women stayed in it, even though they weren't winning many games. So there was something going right here that a lot of times if you lose a lot, there's a lot of turnover, but the players stayed in the program. So I think the first year we won like 7 games, which was great for the program. For me, it was a little difficult since I had just done the rebuild down at Ferrum and was starting to win more games than lose. So it was a little difficult, but I knew what I was signing up for. And then year 2, we had a Cinderella. So we won 13 games. We made the playoffs for the first time in school history, the Centennial Conference playoffs. So it was a bit of a Cinderella year. And then by year 4, I think we were in the NCAA tournament. So there was a lot more talent, I think, on the team than the record indicated, which is why we were able to turn quickly. But I think the location of the school, the Centennial, the academic level, it allowed us to recruit pretty quickly a good pool of women.
Yeah. Wow, that's even more impressive. I didn't realize that you took over a program that was winning, a handful of games a season, and then that I see the bump after year 1, but then to do it in year 2 and then keep doing that, like that says a lot. I have to ask now, because now we're going off on a tangent for me, but like what sort of priorities did you have coming into McDaniel, knowing where you were and knowing where you wanted to get to? So what are those priorities that you would have, I guess maybe in general, when you said very specifically that you wanted to coach at a top national, a top program in the country or nation or however you put it. But like sort of where did you start? I mean, if that's a dumb question, I don't know, but I'm really intrigued. Like, what's that first step you take?
Yeah, I think it helped that, I was 30 years old with no real family responsibility. So I was single and 30. And so I'd had enough experience at Ferrum to understand the importance of recruiting. So similar down at Ferrum, I took a program that was only winning 3 or 4 games, and we were able to get to maybe 10 or 11 wins, finish 3rd in the USA South. So I had kind of the basis at a different level because it wasn't like a nationally ranked type conference, but the idea of how do you rebuild, how do you recruit. Ferrum is a beautiful campus, but located in the middle of nowhere. It's 45 minutes from Roanoke. So it took me 3 years to figure it all out, because I think my 3rd year I was interviewing for some high school AD positions because I thought I was garbage as a coach, and I really don't like to lose very much, and all I did was lose. I think my first 3 years combined, we may have won, 10 games, and it was painful. But then again, year 4 and year 5, we really made some changes and
strides.
Because I learned how to recruit. And I think learning how to recruit at a school that's located, kind of in the middle of nowhere, super rural, you get to McDaniel and the recruiting is just not that it's easy, but in comparison, it was easy.
Right.
So, we put a massive emphasis on recruiting. I had a really committed graduate assistant, Paul Segrin, who, again, like live and die soccer. And it was just, we took part in ODP and club, and it was part-time. So I had to coach club and ODP and anybody who asked for a training session, I had to do everything to make it work. So, but it's recruiting. So much of it is recruiting, is that you can only be as good as the players you have on your team. And then it's just controlling what you can control. My sister played she played lacrosse at Villa Julie, which is now Stevenson University. And I always ask questions. So I asked her, coach, how do you rebuild a program? She was known for rebuilding. And she said, you need to coach them the way you want them to play before they're capable of doing it. You need to basically coach the culture before you might have the right to do that. And so I always just set the standard high in terms of, behavior and expectations and fitness and all the things we can control. And then tried to recruit players who were always better than who we had on our roster. it's a process, and like I said, it was a pretty quick turnaround here, and now the goal and the hard part is how do you stay? How do you do what Scott Fry and
Yeah,
all
yeah,
have done and just stay there?
yeah. I'm not there yet. I'm not there in my thinking process to think about how do you stay. I'm still thinking like, oh, how do you build? Like
How do
that's
you
pretty
stay?
cool.
Yeah,
But it is like now you're in the rarefied air, and it's hard to stay there, right? Like I think that's that last 1% they always say is the hardest, right?
yeah.
Like because you think yeah. But um, I'll just ask. I mean, probably it sounds like at McDaniel, definitely, but maybe just over your career, do you think players have gotten better in terms of not just the types you recruit, but in general, the overall quality of players that you see? Do you think they've gotten better?
I think so. I mean, there's so many opportunities to play now. Um, there's so many club teams. There's the ECNL and the GA and
Hmm.
EDP, and there's a lot of teams to play on now. Unfortunately, they all cost so much money. That's a whole nother conversation for
That's
who
a
is actually being left out. But
yeah.
yeah, I think overall, I mean, if I think of like my team in college compared to um, teams now, I think that the quality of player is better. Um,
Hmm.
and looking at our team, it's just again every year we're
Yeah.
reevaluating is what
Yeah.
what is that next step? What is that next level?
Yeah.
How do we get there and stay there?
Yeah. 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 For sure, for sure. You're like I said, you're at that level. Man, it's just those players I'm sure you're bringing in are already top quality, and so all you're doing is you're playing with the margins, right? Like trying to figure out marginally how can I get better players, how can I get better players, or make those players even better.
Yeah, the development's
Um,
part too.
yeah,
I think
yeah. That's a good point because I don't really ask about that, but I do think there is this there's this development aspect that probably
yeah,
gets overlooked
yeah. I think
in a
that's something.
program.
I think that's something too because we may get GA kids and ECNL kids on our team, but Hannah Shepers is an All American who played for the Cecil United. No one's ever heard of that
Mm-hmm.
club. Abby
Yeah.
Keene, who was all region, played for Salisbury United. Who,
Yeah.
you know, so we will watch everyone. We do our best to watch everyone, and if you look at the makeup of our roster, it may not be all ECNL and all GA. It's
Yeah.
the best players on some teams that maybe don't get seen as much, don't get quite as much exposure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think for us, the development is a huge piece. Is can we recruit a player that is ready right away, right? And everyone
Yeah.
wants that player, that forward, that midfielder, that goalkeeper.
Yeah.
But you're not going to recruit 11 freshmen who are ready to play and start right away.
But
So what
yeah.
do you do with them?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do in that year where they're not getting a lot of playing time?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big piece for us. Is it's a lot of ball work in the off
Yeah.
season. It's player led, and we really look for in the recruiting process just kind of that soccer head who just
Mm-hmm.
wants to get better, wants to spend time with the
Yeah.
ball, and not just run. Because so much emphasis
Yeah.
is on fitness, and we have that emphasis. But how do we become better soccer players?
Yeah.
In the process, and it takes a special kid to go and kick that ball against a wall for hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah. That you just said something that's interesting about the so much emphasis on the fitness side of the game. Do you think that's something at the club level, or do you just think in general soccer is just it? I actually think it's easier to focus in on fitness than to actually work on the
Right.
tactical
Right. Yeah.
aspects of the
The
game.
fitness. I mean, you're choosing to play a game on a field that's 80 by 120 and lasts for 90 minutes and has subbing rules. Like
Yeah,
it has to be. It
yeah,
has to
yeah.
be a top priority. But I think sometimes it becomes the only priority, and so we try to
Mm-hmm.
make sure it's not the only priority in the off season and in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
because again, then you miss the development piece. Is
Yeah,
we've had some special stories here where Katie Kirschenman was a freshman, didn't play much, sophomore didn't play much, came off the bench as a junior, led the team in goals and was all conference. She didn't start till her senior year, where she became all conference and all region. If she would have, if she wouldn't have spent those 2 years focused on development and only focusing on fitness, she probably wouldn't have been had that career. So I think again, fitness has to be an emphasis, but can it be coupled with the individual development so that the team can get better, every fall.
Yeah. That's very true. I totally agree, right? Like, fitness is a component. You're never going to escape. I tell my boys this all the time, my one son's a goalkeeper, and he just hates running, right? Like, that's how he ended up in goal, believe it or not, but that's a long story. I tell him, like, there's always asked me with the high school, like, is it going to be fitness? It's going to be fitness. So I was like, don't ask. Like, it could be, maybe not. You never know. It's part of the game, so you might as well get comfortable with it. But I do think, especially when I watch club practices and whatnot, sometimes I just wonder if not they go the easy route and the fitness becomes a little bit more of the purpose than the actual part of what makes the game so great, which is the
and I when I say emphasis on fitness, like, we don't do fitness in the fall. Like, we don't do really any fitness testing. We don't do fitness at the end of practice. We don't have, we don't do it, because the expectation in our program is you come in fit so that tactically we can figure out how to beat whoever we need to game one. And so when I say emphasis on fitness, I'm talking more about, like, it has to be a personal emphasis on fitness, and we guide them, obviously. Now, in the off season, so in spring ball and their summer workouts and winter workouts, like, then it is fitness heavy, and our spring season is super fitness heavy. But in the fall, it's like, if you're not fit, it's too late.
You're behind. Yeah, it's too late and you're behind.
We don't do any fitness testing. We don't do fitness. We play soccer. I mean, if you play soccer for 90 minutes, 5 days a week or 4 days a week in practice, like, and you play 2 games.
Fitness will come. Yeah. You better be fit. Right? Yeah. Otherwise, by day 3, you're not going to be able to walk.
Right, and then which means you just don't play. It just means you don't play.
Yeah. Do you have, like, a leadership group or a leadership council among your team, like captains and some other elements that?
We've got a leadership program. So it's called the Rise Leadership Program. So there's, like, kind of 4 levels of it. We'd say stand, support, carry, and lift. So basically, freshmen, we say you have to stand on your own, right? You've got to go to class. You've got to be responsible on the weekends, where I don't have to worry about what you're doing and phone calls I may receive. You've got to get to practice on time. You've got to be responsible. So you just got to basically take care of yourself. You're figuring out college and it's fall. Like, can you just take care of yourself? And then for the support, we talk about the sophomores. Their job is to support. So can you support the freshmen who are kind of navigating college? But can you also be a first follower, meaning, lead by example, follow in the footsteps of what the juniors and seniors and the upperclassmen are trying to do within our environment. The juniors and seniors should be carrying, right? You carry the load. You check in on everybody. You do all the extra work. You check in with me more. You just kind of carry the team on your back as upperclassmen, and then a really special group of players are able to lift everyone above themselves. And those are usually your captains that really, and they don't have to be. It can be a freshman, it can be a sophomore. So we basically say this is how we lead. Can we have a freshman who's able to carry? Can we, like, this is the minimum, but can you lead the best way you're capable of? But it's that special group, those players who don't get a lot of playing time, who can still be coaching the players in their position. Can you put the team above yourself? And so we kind of have a program where they go through. I mean, we've got captains on our team. We do a lot of stuff with the upperclassmen, but for the most part, all the leadership stuff we do it with the whole team, because the emphasis. I mean, we recognize that it's a trickle down effect from how the juniors and seniors act day in and day out. That's what's the younger players are going to follow. But
Yeah.
why are we just teaching juniors and seniors and talking to juniors and seniors when it's our whole team? So most of the stuff we do is with the whole team, but then we definitely have, a group of 5 or 6 players that we check in more, and those are kind of the captains, and then the players that we think will probably be captains down the pipeline.
Captains at some point, who show that special something, right?
Right.
That's my latest thing is looking at that leadership. How is it managed in a program? Because I think that's a key element of the success of, like, if you have a strong leadership program or council, however you want to define it,
Right.
like, it makes that much easier to sort of keep what you want your program to be. And keep moving forward in that direction. So.
I read something, I don't know, maybe this past summer that we talked about this year is, a leader is whoever's doing the right thing in that moment. And so we try to emphasize, like, leadership can be done. Because imagine the more leaders you have, the better you're going to be. And it doesn't mean, the more wins you're going to have. It just means the better you're going to be. Because everyone's going to hold each other accountable, and you're going to hold yourself accountable. So it's whoever's doing the right thing in that moment that is the leader. Right. Again, we try to have 30 leaders on our team, and there's certainly the older girls who set the environment, because we talk a lot about culture versus our environment, and the older players set that environment to lead out of. But the hope is we're helping younger players lead earlier.
That ends up being confidence, right? If they feel that they have the confidence and the permission, right? I always think, too, especially when it comes to leadership, you step into that locker room your freshman year, you're like, I just don't want to get in trouble, and you sort of take that, I'm just going to follow that. They look important, I'm just going to go that way, and I think that, especially at the youngest ages, that's the freshman year, I think that's probably the toughest thing to deal with, right? So tell me, what kind of player do you look for when you're recruiting? Like, do you sort of have an image of a player or student athlete that you'd be looking to bring on board?
I mean, we're always looking to bring in the best player, right, that we can. So we basically say, like, in order for us to consider you in our program, like, you have to have an athletic ability and technical ability that is here. And the hope is, well, then the 23 class is here and the 24 class is here. And so, when I started recruiting, it was here. And so can that level of technique and athleticism grow? So there has to be a minimum, for both of those things. And then you're looking at position-specific things. I think the intangible pieces, like the gritty piece of, being willing to win 50-50 balls. And if you make a mistake, are you slouching your shoulders, or are you sprinting back? How do you manage when your coach yells at you from the sideline? Like, all that kind of mentality stuff we're looking at as well. Obviously, the academics play into it. But then we try to spend a lot of time with the individual and their parents, just to make sure it's the right person. So we put a big emphasis on our culture. And I think a lot of programs do. I think every program talks about it, but it's a matter of the follow through. Like, is the culture of, being a good person and not tearing down your teammates and putting the team before yourself and all those things, like, how do you really gauge that in a recruit who wants to play and small playing time? And so we try to spend a lot of time with players and be upfront about how hard it is to play in the program. We don't promise playing time. We don't promise positions or starting positions, or it's like we say, you're going to have to scratch and claw. And if you want to compete, like, this is the place for you. If you want to be told that, you're going to get playing time, well, we can't do that, because I won't tell our All-American that. So we're looking for someone who's got, again, that athletic, technical base, the academics, but then just this idea of they're a good human. Which is why we make sure we talk to them a lot. We talk to their parents a lot. We have them on campus several times. Because ultimately you have 30 players on your team. Maybe we play 18 a game. There's a lot of players who don't play. If you don't have that last piece of understanding and buying in, Like, you're not going to do well. You can't have half your team upset every day. That's why we talk about, roles on a team, and there's this idea of a developing player. So it's not a sub. It's not someone who sits the bench. I'm developing. It's a developing player. If I have a role, my job is to keep developing and getting better so that when so-and-so graduates, I'm ready. Or if so-and-so gets hurt, I'm ready. Or, hey, I'm just ready, which means I get to play. So that last piece is the hardest. But, we do our best to evaluate, players and their families when they come on campus to try to make sure the culture stays intact as we bring each class in.
Yeah. So how tough was COVID on you, on the program, on the women on your team? Was it easy? Was it fun? Was it? I don't think any of those things but I figured I'd ask.
Those words would not that I would have chosen to describe the COVID year. So my whole team came back to campus because it was optional, because the school did have an online option, but the whole team, I think 2/3 to campus came back and 1/3 did just online. So they got some semblance of college, even though there were lots of kind of rules in place to keep everyone safe, right? So in the fall, we did no contact. So we were training in groups of 10, and this is the end of it. So at first, we were dribbling in like coned-in areas with just one person, and we worked to groups of 10, which was great because then you can do tons of pattern play, you can do tons of we found a way to make it competitive. I mean, I say I've coached 10 seasons here because I feel like me and Michael, who I may reference a lot, who was my GA and now is going to be our full-time assistant this year. We coached our butts off. Like, we coached so hard. We couldn't bring in any volunteer. Like, we have a couple, like our goalkeeper coach and other volunteer coaches. They weren't even allowed to come. So it was me and Michael trying to make it enjoyable. We did fun Fridays, which were just like, it's like little kid relay race games, which kids still love that stuff. And then in the spring, we were able to train as a whole team. So we were and we have good numbers. So we'd always go 11v11. We were able to kind of train in that way. So I think the silver linings with COVID were my team got to know each other incredibly well without knowing who was going to get playing time. So again, there's no separation, because even if you want to have this culture of your whole team you have this culture of your teams together, everyone has a role. But when playing time gets distributed, sometimes it's hard, right? It's hard for players who don't play, who work just as hard. And so because we didn't have any of that, like, I think, and it was like us against COVID. It wasn't us against, Haverford or Hopkins. It was like all of us against COVID. And they just bought into this idea of like, we said we're going to get to know each other better, and we're going to enjoy every moment we have together, and we're going to train like we're getting ready for our next game, even though we have no idea when that's going to be. And so the spring, we were really, really able to train, and the girls trained like we were going to play a game. And so I think it was, there was something really powerful about having a full training year and not having to worry about anybody else and only worrying about ourselves. And I think for myself as a coach, COVID was a really good thing. Not in terms of what it did to our country and to the world and to people's health, but I personally met my husband. I was married to soccer for, 38 years. So I actually had an opportunity to, to meet somebody. And so I had that. But the other thing I got to do was put my career in perspective. So we had that Cinderella year. Year 4, we went to the NCAAs for the first year. Year 5, we went to the Sweet 16. Year 6, we still made the NCAA tournament, but it was this kind of 2017 was this oddly beautiful year where my All-American goalkeeper tore her ACL, came
Oh,
back to play, but came back after 10 games, came back to play on it, ended up, being phenomenal against Hopkins, still getting us to the NCAAs. We lost to Lynchburg in overtime, but it was almost because she came back to play. We were all playing for her, and it just changed our goals. Um, but then in 18 and 19, we didn't make the tournament, and I wallowed in sorrow, ridiculously. Um, so I feel like COVID gave me the opportunity to realize that, because I'm a gracious loser, but I very much struggle with it. I learned how to lose at Ferrum, and to be gracious and to understand what's within our control. But when you go to the NCAA tournament 3 years in a row and advance to the Sweet 16 and have seasons like that, anything less than that starts to feel like a failure. And
yeah.
we had good years. We were playing in the ECACs at that time, which is like the regional tournament, and it allowed us to play 2 more weekends, and we swept through them and won them both. And we're hoisting up these ECAC trophies, and I see the joy in everyone's face, and it's so joyful. And for me, it was just a relief because
Yeah.
we were supposed to win that. And so, I got a chance to really look and say, like, what are you doing, Sandy? Like yeah, like we've had success, more success than I probably ever. I dreamed it, but didn't know if I would realize it. Um, so for my career, I think it actually was a really good thing because it gave me perspective, and it really made me look at the moment instead of what's next, who's next, rankings. Oh gosh, are we going to get in? Are we not going to get in? And so like this year, and I know we'll talk about this in a little bit, it was really, you stay in the moment. That was it. That's all we talked about on the team. You stay in the moment. We're not looking at all this. We're aware that this other stuff is going on that will give us an opportunity to play in the tournament and stuff like that. But it was really just, we're not even going game to game. You're going game.
Yeah.
Next day is a practice. All right, we're only going to focus on that practice. We're going to win the practice. And then we have practice again. Okay, we're going to win the practice. And so I feel like I'd like to think that I will, moving forward, do a better job of staying in the moment. And I think I would have enjoyed those other seasons more if I could have done it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one who took a while to learn how to lose. I don't do that well, and that is not something that's in my DNA. And there are points I know it's always. I almost had these like out of body experiences of being like, you're crazy. Like you hate to lose so much and sort of unhealthily. But I would be in my own head. I'd be like, that's nuts. Why you, and I think it took kids and a bunch of different things that I just sort of, there's more to it. There's just more to it. And, let me ask you something, because I mentioned this. You're the fourth women's coach that I've gotten to interview, and I just started asking this recently of all the coaches, and I know it's an experience on the men's side, but on the women's side, is there a D1 or bust type mentality with I'll just say student athletes or recruits in general that you, as a Division III school, let's say, battle or have to deal with?
Yeah, we do. There's probably, let's say, if we identify, just say 30 players that we're really excited about, I'd say 10 of them who would be phenomenal Division III, top Division III for top teams in the country. They'd be phenomenal players. We lose every year to, smaller D1 schools that don't offer them scholarships that, we can check in on them and see that they're not getting any playing time. They're not getting scholarships. Right. And so we definitely battle it. But I always say, you've got to find, what's your dream, and you got to pursue that. So if that's the dream, even if I can look at it and say, oh, man, you do so well here, but if that is what is success for that player, then we wish them the best of luck, because I hope no one tries to tell me I'm not going to be good enough to accomplish my dream here at McDaniel. So I'm not going to be one to say, hey, I don't think you can do that. So we definitely do. I would say with a third of our recruits that we really are excited about, at least a third of them they'll entertain us, but they'll let us know, like, this is my goal. So yeah, it's definitely.
Do you get any rebounds from that? Like, do you see players that you talk to and you tried to get them to McDaniel, and then they do land at a Division I, and then they kind of like come back and be like, I should have gone to McDaniel. I'd like to come to McDaniel now.
Unfortunately, we usually see them go for a year or two and then stop playing soccer.
Oh my gosh.
That's what we would more often see, or they'll transfer to a school and not play soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
That bothers me just as a soccer guy, right? Just it even kills me with little kids, Oh, I don't want to play anymore. Like, really? It's really hard. That's one of the things I'm like, you don't want to keep going? Like, it's fun, but I get it. It just that pains me, especially talented players. That really does bother me. How about I'm sure you're in tune to all the offside rules now that are offside, overtime rules. Like, you're probably like, what? Like, going back to the MLS NASL 35-yard line and in. No, the overtime rules. Where there are no overtimes in regular season, 10 minutes and no golden goal. Do you have any thoughts on that? And probably more importantly, what I'm more interested, is that going to change the way you coach a game during the regular season when there's no OT?
Yeah. I don't know what I think of it yet. So we could look back and say, in 2019, there was a game that we were the much better team. We went into overtime and we were able to beat them. So we like overtime, right? And then I could look at this past year and say we were tied with Hopkins and then lost to them in overtime, and it's like, I'd have been okay with the tie without overtime. So it's kind of one of those things where I'd like to think it will even itself out. I guess the only thing you worry about is, how many ties do teams end up with? And then what does that look like in terms of figuring out playoff spots? Because our conference is so stinking hard. So, like, are we going to be flipping coins to find out? Because, if you go through the tiebreakers, and then you have to flip coins, I don't want to flip a coin to find out. I'd rather go to overtime and find out who was going to win than flip a coin to find out. Yeah. So I mean, if it's going to affect how we get into playoffs, I'll probably then say, man, I don't like this. But, there's something fun about overtime and golden goal and the excitement that goes around with it, but it also is a little bit more painful when you lose. So I haven't wrapped my head around it yet. You'll have to ask me that question, in the next 2 years, once I see how it plays out. In terms of coaching differently, I don't know. I think right now I'd like to say, we go into a game with a game plan, and I think we're always playing to win. I don't think we're playing for ties. Now, again, they asked me that while we were rebuilding. That might be a little bit different, where a tie is something that you might pack it in a little bit more and hold on and But I mean, I guess it's something I'm going to have to start thinking about and considering. But I think, if you play for 90 minutes, I always look at it as 90 minutes is the end of the game, anyways. Because at the end of the game, let's say it's 0-0. If I then take extra risk to attack, well, then am I going to be, susceptible
Yeah.
to getting scored on? I probably am not. I don't know if I'm going to take that extra risk unless it's a team
Yeah.
that, unless it's a team that I'm like we're much stronger than.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even then, 90 minutes, we're still going to do that anyways. We're not
Yeah.
going to be playing for overtime. We're going to probably make that tactical change regardless. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I don't
You're still
know.
going to throttle it, right? Like from the
Yeah,
beginning, you're still going to go after a team that whoever you're playing, you're going to go after. It might be a little different. You play Johns Hopkins again, or you
right.
play, right? TC&J or Christopher Newton. Not that you do, but you play teams like that. Then it becomes a little bit more of a chess match. I understand that, but
Yeah,
I always just wondered if you're evenly matched
yeah. I think,
and it's out of conference, you're
yeah.
like, hey, let's just go for it, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think my approach every game is that it's a 90-minute game. So,
yeah,
um, we're always trying to win in those 90 minutes. And
yeah,
if we're up a goal, then we're going to have a strategy to tactically stay up a goal those last 10
stay
minutes.
up a goal. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know if it'll change too much, but again, ask me 2 years from now, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Because if
This
it's
is this is recorded, so I am totally
yeah,
going to come back in 2 years. Remember
well,
me?
if we
Like,
find, if we find that okay, we're tying 5 games a year for whatever reason,
yeah,
'cause we usually go into maybe 1 or 2 overtime games a year, but we've had
yeah,
games where we went into like five. So if we're
yeah,
tying 5 games a year and that's keeping us out of our own playoffs or
yeah,
rankings, well then I'd have to say, okay, look, we gotta
yeah.
rethink this. But until that happens, I don't know if we really have to rethink those things.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, what do you have any non-negotiables that that you have on your program? If I, as a very talented incoming freshman, are there certain things that I have to abide by to playing on the team? Which I totally am asking this because I'm ready to enroll, right? Like
Right.
I'll put on a wig or something,
So there are some. I don't. I If you ask our team, I wouldn't. They won't say like we've got a lot of rules. It's
Mm-hmm.
you've got to fall into who we are and our culture. So academically, you have to make that a priority. Um, so like that is a non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, your behavior, especially on the weekends, is a
Mm-hmm.
non-negotiable. And I go into every preseason and say like, you guys are 18 to 22 years old, and my mortgage depends on your behavior. Like me being able to pay my
Yeah,
mortgage, me being able to feed my family depends on your
yeah,
behavior. And so I try to make that clear in terms of like, I'm not just coaching because I love it, because I do, but this is my
yeah,
livelihood and it depends on trusting 18 to 22-year olds. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
we talk about
That's
that.
a great point.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah,
why a lot of people leave, because you can't trust 18 to 22-year-olds
yeah, yeah,
oftentimes, which is why we spend so much time in the recruiting process making sure that,
yeah,
I'm like, bring
yeah.
me the nerds, man. Bring me the nerdiest kids I can find. Worry about on the weekends, because the
Yeah,
players you don't have to worry about on the weekends are the ones that are usually more committed to their sports and to
yeah,
the academics. So, and then the culture of the
yeah,
program. So like those three things: academics, your behavior, and then the culture of the program. So you may do great in school, you may not get you won't get in trouble on the weekends, but if you are complaining about playing time and bad talking the player who's getting playing time, like it doesn't work.
yeah,
So just the
yeah,
culture of who we are and what our standards are. It's just can you fall into that? And we don't expect you to be perfect, right? It's just
yeah, yeah,
if you do mess up in some aspect, it's taking responsibility and making
yeah,
sure it doesn't happen again as well. So
yeah.
A couple years. One question I think maybe we passed over is like, when did the program become mine?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that was year 4. So year 3,
Uh-huh.
we had a little bit of a culture issue, and
Uh,
we had to take some players off the team, and it was
uh-huh.
really difficult. And it involves, decisions on the weekends, and it was a really hard year for me. And I kind of had said, like, if this is coaching, like, it's
Yeah,
just
no
not,
way.
it's
I'm
just
done.
right. And so it really what it did was set hard and firm. Who are we? Like, we don't talk about it. We're not just saying this is who we are. We're going to be about it. And the next
Hmm.
3 years, we went to the NCAA tournament. So
Yeah.
I feel like my team fell apart year 3, and then it was finally mine year 4.
Uh-huh.
And it was the hardest year, but the most defining year probably of my coaching career,
Yeah.
because the team had set a standard. Some players didn't live up to it, and
Hmm.
um, it changed things.
Can I ask? I don't. You're right. That's, if it's not something that you want to talk about, but was this during this season or was this
During the
during like
season,
this off
uh,
season? During
we
the
we
season, yeah.
basically we've removed 10 players from our team
Wow.
with 3 games to go, and then 2 games to go, and then the ECACs. And
Wow.
we didn't make playoffs that year. So once we realized we didn't make playoffs, we made some bad decisions on the weekend. And
Yeah.
then we played Hopkins next on a Tuesday.
Uh huh.
And I mean, 10 players, like seniors, starters. My, all conference, all region kid was off with a
Right.
concussion. I had my backup keeper in a field jersey. And we
Uh
played
huh.
Hopkins on Tuesday. We finished the season, I think, with 13 or 14 players, and we played Hopkins 3-1. It's the first time we've scored on them, and it was the best score. We were losing 5-0 up to then. Like, we were competing with most teams, but Hopkins was just killing us still. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
we played them 3-1 at home, and it was like the biggest. It was a defining moment for me as a coach to realize the players who were our developing players not playing very much, because we made sure we spent time developing them, they were able to step on that field and play against
Step.
Hopkins,
Yeah.
know our tactics, and understand
Hmm.
what we needed them to do.
Yep.
And we played a better game against Hopkins than we have in school history.
Yeah.
And no players are more important than the team and the culture. And
Yeah.
for me, it was just that defining moment to say, like, no player, I don't care who it is, it does not matter. You will not be in this
Yeah.
program if you can't fall into who we are. And so it
Yeah.
allowed me the freedom to, like, just coach within myself and hold my own standard and
Hmm.
be true to myself. And it really meant that every player who was in, because some of those players rejoined in the spring, and now they
Hmm.
were all in because they knew how valuable.
Ah. Yeah. Yeah.
They were
If,
fitter than they've ever been. They were more committed than they'd ever been. Some of them shagged balls for us the rest of the season because they were just like, I am sorry. And they came back in the spring, and man, it was like, whoever was left over from that were so all in. Everything changed. It wasn't talk about
mhm.
this is our culture. It was be about this is our culture.
Yeah.
And, and that's, again, the next year we went to the NCAA tournament. Um, it was really hard, but it was really worth it because I got to figure out who I was as a coach, and we got to figure out who we were, as a team.
Yeah. I will say that takes some salt, right? Like to do that,
I was glad I
to
had.
make that first. What's that?
I was glad I had a job afterwards. So, because some
I.
schools you don't have the freedom, but we signed player contracts,
Mm-hmm.
and the players actually made the contracts stronger than I would have. They came up with it.
Uh-huh.
This is what my thoughts for the weekends, and they said this is what we think, and I said, as long as you guys agree on it and you sign this, and it's not like signing, this is all of our rules. It's just I'm going to behave in this way because soccer is important to me. And so you put your name on something, and I say I'm going to do it. And because now we have that story, and I tell it every preseason. And now every kid who comes into this program knows if you put alcohol or you put the weekend above this team, you will not have this team. And it's not a threat. It's just, but we talk about it when we recruit. You've got to care to be so good.
That's part of the process, right? That recruiting process is like, look, I know college has these people have visions of college and partying and having fun.
Right. And our kids still go out, and they're
yeah.
still college kids. It's just, can we be responsible college kids?
Yeah.
And so we, now I have that story, and now every player knows if we say this is what you need to do to stay within our program, which we give them a lot of, like, let's talk about this. What's fair? What do you guys think? It's not the coach mandating this. It's, we work through it together, and we ask what's fair, and we ask, I'm not there on the weekends. I don't know what it's like. I don't want to know what it's like. All I want to know is I can trust you because you pay my mortgage. So basically, I mean, and now it's just part of it. And we don't have any issues ever because we have that story. We do not ever have any issues.
That's fun. I'm gonna chop that one down to a little video quick shot, and just because that is, like I said, that takes some salt to make that decision to get rid of 10 players or to say you're done, in order to protect your program. And then, and then the outcome to that, right? Because it could have easily gone the other way, right? Like players being like, whatever, So, look, and we'll talk about it. But I mean, just by any standard, it's funny because I was going to say this before when you were talking about the NCAA's and sort of once you're there, that right? I was mentioning it yesterday. That once you get to the NCAA's, there is, for better or for worse, that's your bar.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, that's always going to be your bar. And then you get a little bit further, that becomes your bar until, right? And you're never quite satisfied, right? But what were your expectations this year? And would you, for this past year, I'll just say, and like I said, we'll talk about some of the other things, but like, were you thinking like this was going to be a pretty record-breaking year?
I don't think I ever go into it like that, because the Centennial is so good. So you still have to get through all of those teams who are nationally ranked. So when we look at a season, we say first make our playoffs, right? And then as the season's going on, can we hit that 2-3 seed? And then as the season's going on, can we be the 1 seed? And usually if you're 1, 2, or 3, you've got a really good chance of making it.
Good chance.
Right? Yeah. So
that's true. In the Centennial on the women's side, definitely the case.
We sent 5 before. In 2019 we sent 5. This past year I think we sent 3. So 3 is pretty normal out of Centennial. So it's actually easier to make the NCAA tournament than it is to win our conference. I think
that's crazy. That's crazy.
So my expectation was that I had a really talented athletic group of players that I thought would be really hard to beat. Because, you don't know how many games you're going to win. But I remember I told the athletic director when he asked me the question, like, how are you guys going to be? I said, it's going to be really hard to beat us. I don't know how many games we'll win, but it's going to be really, really hard to beat us. Now, we didn't have a single game. I know some schools, the Landmark, I know you talked to Colleen, they got 4 games. We didn't get a single game. So we played ourselves. Every Friday we had green versus white, and we'd videotape it and break it down, and we played ourselves every week in the spring. But so I knew we'd be really, really hard to beat, with hopes that we would win a fair amount of games. Um, we got to game 10 without giving up a goal, which is absurd.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that, because I was about to say that's absurd.
It's absurd.
That's just...
But we actually, so we went to Swarthmore and they scored on us, I think, in the 13th minute. And my team is not one where, like, you see a lot of teams where, like, we get scored on and then someone calls the whole team together and then we're not a team that does that. We've never been a team that really did that. But our senior captain brought everybody in, and we finished out the half and went into the second half. And with 4 minutes to go, I mean, we're down to 4 minutes. We're losing 1-0. With 4 minutes to go, we score and we tie it up. And during that process, someone on the other team had gotten hurt. There was a collision and someone got hurt. Actually, two of the SWAT players ran into each other. And one was down.
Yeah.
So the girls came over to get water because it was like 100 degrees on the turf. And I said, guys, let's just play to win. Like, we got like 3 minutes left. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's play to win. And they SWA had kickoff, and one of my players dribbled it. We got the ball, played it around midfield, and one of my kids dribbled from midfield, went and scored. And so we won that game 2-1, having been down 1-0 with 4 minutes to go. And that's when I said, we're going to be really good this year. Because it never felt like the team thought we were going to lose. I never thought we were going to lose.
Yeah.
So it was like we had this group of women who 4 minutes down or 4 minutes to go, a goal down, like at no point did they look frazzled. So at that point I said, oh, this is going to be a really interesting special year. They just found ways. They found ways to do it. It helps when you've got a natural goal scorer. We had older players. So it certainly helps because we had some age to go with it. So our seniors were a really great incoming freshman class, so they had a lot of playing experience as freshmen and sophomores. So they weren't, seniors with just a little bit of experience as sophomores. So that definitely helped too. But it was a special year. It was just, again, we just stayed in the moment, and it was just, it was something.
So for those watching, and I think this is why I reached out originally, is when I was trying to go through, and it just sort of made sense to the Christopher Newport for obvious reasons, but you went 18-2-1. You lost to Carnegie Mellon in the second round of the NCAAs, which I think is probably the only game you didn't score in.
Yeah. We tied F&M 0-0.
0-0. Okay, yeah.
The Centennial Championship was the only other game, I think. Yeah, I guess that we got shut out. Yeah.
The only other loss you had was against a very good Johns Hopkins team, and that was during the regular season. When I looked at your stats, you shut out 14 of your 17 opponents.
Yeah, and I think actually we've got
is beyond absurd at that point. Now we're talking about you're cooking the books, right? Like, you don't see that. And the only other team that I thought about was because I don't remember their stats, and I was going to look back, but I didn't have a chance to, is Christopher Newport. They had some crazy numbers too, and I was like, holy mackerel. And I know TC&J is like that as well, just sort of these... I'm just that astounds me, and I guess I would just ask. I'm sort of going all around here, but is that sort of your style of putting your because this is a defensive posture, right? Like, if you're not gonna concede the goals, it's because you're doing something defensively. And I'm just wondering. My first thought was I wonder if that's an intentional thing because that's what you focus in on practice. And is that something that you do focus in on a lot, or?
Yeah, I think, it was, it was something. Our athletic director came down to me and was like, you guys you led the NCAA with 17 out of 21 shutouts. We have a plaque for you. And I was like, okay, I didn't know, but we've got one. Oh, I
Hey,
do.
nice plaque. Great.
Yeah. No, I think honestly, so I love data, right? So we break down our team every year based on, we do goal analysis, goals for, goals against, how are we creating goals? Where are we not creating goals from? How are we conceding goals? What are the trends? What do we need to work on? Because that's how we decide what are we going to work on for the spring. Last year for our COVID year, we had young players that we felt really strongly about in terms of playing in our back line to recruit. So we have, returning senior in goal. We've got a returning senior in the center of our back line. We've got an outstanding outside back who's a junior. But then the other two positions, center back and outside back, we thought two freshmen were going to play in it, right? And now all of a sudden they're sophomores playing in it, but they had never played a game before. So we've got two sophomores in our back line, but they've never played. So we definitely did a lot of defending during COVID. But I would say, generally speaking, we didn't do any more or less than we normally do. But what we normally do is, every year, and I'd have to go look at the stats. So the Centennial, the team that usually wins the regular season in the Centennial Conference is the team that gives up the least amount of goals. It is not the team that scores the most goals. So the year that we conceded 3 goals in the Centennial Conference, which is 2016, we won the regular season. So usually, it's whoever concedes the less. That's who wins. And you have some years where, again, the tons of tying, but you still have to tie with 0-0. So, so it's always been important. Like you can't win games. Like you're not going to win games 5-4, right? Not very often. You're not going to win games 4-3 or even 3-2, maybe 2-1. So
it's an error.
You have to be able to defend. And so we do a lot of time defending, but we do probably just as much attacking. It's just defending is based on rules. Like the way that you defend in soccer, it's defined. Where attacking, there's just so many options. There's so much to teach, the flank play, the central play. So defending piece, and it's not just our backs that we work with, it's the whole team. So, we had a really special back line and goalkeeper, our 6, our 8. Like we've got these really special players, but you still have to do the work. You have got our forwards, our All-American forward was doing the work, running side to side, and our wingers were pinching. And so, we probably, the way we've run practice is, we will do some stuff as a team to start off, and a lot of times then we split for 20 minutes, and the attacking group will work on something, and the backs might work on something, or I'll have the midfielders pulled out where the backs go against the forwards, or we have this 20 minutes, 30 minutes of time that we work on really position-specific stuff, and that's when we do a lot of stuff with our back line. But then it's just so much of what we do is just tactics, and perfecting, shifts and how we move and how we cover space and how we communicate. So I don't think it was any more than, like the training was any more than we used to. I think it was more of players who were so committed to getting it right. And committed to communicating and committed to doing the dirty work, the winning the 50-50 balls and putting their bodies on the line, and the goalkeeper who had the discipline to tactically play the way we asked her to play, because so many times it's goalkeeper mistakes that that's how you score. So she had so much discipline to tactically be where we asked her to be. And it's just, again, we had such a special, it was just a really special group.
Yeah. Was there something about the Carnegie Mellon game that was different? I'm just saying, like you were shut out. You conceded 2, right? Which
the first one was an own goal, so that hurts. That one makes it tough. And Carnegie Mellon was, they're a great team. So when you get to that level, when you're playing, it's the 32 teams left in the country.
It's hard.
It's really hard. And we conceded both goals in the first half, which also is hard. And like I said, the first one was an own goal, but it was a great build up. So it wasn't like just accidental. I mean, it was a good build up.
Yeah.
And again, those things happen. So I think it was just a really good Carnegie Mellon team. I think we made 2-3 big errors. And then we fought our tails off the rest of the game. So I was disappointed for the group who had goals of getting to the next round. But I didn't leave the game disappointed because we played as hard as we possibly could have. It's just, that's what happened on that day against a against a really, really good team.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And if it starts with an own goal, there's something about an own goal early in a big game that really, I think psychologically, even if you're like, no, we got this, okay, great, it's really hard. It's more so than if they just scored a regular goal. You're like, oh, well, they scored a great goal.
But I even think, because the girls believed so much every minute, like at no point did I feel like they let up or they didn't believe. Like we went into halftime saying, hey, just one at a time. We'll score the first one. Like we just one at a time. And it was like we had level heads and they just had the right air to them. A lot of great leadership in the program and a lot of young players too who were playing and we had more depth this year as well. But that game, it went how it went, and we played hard the whole time. And as a coach, again, I don't like to lose, but I can live with losing when the team plays as hard as they can. And that's, we really, really wanted to get to the, especially it hurts to, we hosted too. It hurts a little bit more.
Yeah. I think that's what I was looking at too, is like you were the host, and I always think there is an intrinsic value to being at home.
Yeah. I also, I can also look at that game and be like, that felt like it should have been a Sweet 16 game. That Carnegie Mellon team, it felt like, but when you get to 32, there's no perfect pairing. It just felt they were as good as the best team that we played. If not, they probably were the best team that we played all year. So they definitely gave us a harder time than Johns Hopkins did.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's one of those things where it felt like, man, it would have been nicer to see them the next round because it felt, it was a hard game. It was a hard game.
It was too early in the tournament to be facing a team like that.
Yeah, and it felt like that, but then it's like you look at who else is left, and you're like, well,
you're like, what?
You look at who else is left, and everyone's so good when you get to the round of 32 that you're going to have to beat somebody, and Carnegie Mellon got us that day.
Yeah, I say ultimately, right, like to be the best, you got to go through the best.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter when. At some point, to be the best, you got to go through the best. And,
exactly.
Hey, you. As an aside, you mentioned that you're really data driven. It's sort of my own. This is sort of how this whole channel crazily started. Was me looking at passing, and then I looked at corners and stuff like that. But can I ask you, because I have this schizophrenic debate in my head about the value of set plays and corners in Division III soccer. Like, how valuable do you think they are in terms of goal scoring opportunities, and how much of a premium do you place on them? Maybe for your team in particular, or if you have an opinion for more broadly the teams you face.
I don't think it's just Division III soccer. I think it's soccer, right? Like I've looked at like the World Cup breakdowns and stuff, and the amount of goals that come from set pieces. We probably score 50% of our goals each year are set pieces. In some sports. So it's 40 to 50% every single year. And that's where I think if you look at the controllables that I talked about in the rebuilding, set pieces, man. Set pieces. We do set piece, we're looking at preseason for next year, and within the first 2 days we're looking at set piece seminars. Looking at corner kicks and free kicks and throw-ins.
Yeah.
And
You'd even do throw-ins?
oh yeah.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
So I mean, we score goals. We score goals on we design it. We have players who can do it to score goals on throw-in. So we probably score 8 to 10 corner kicks a year, which is, I mean, I think we scored 41 goals this year. And
You did.
Yeah, so I think it's, we score a lot of corner kicks, and we actually didn't score corner for a while this year because we had a new player taking them. So once she got her service down, and thank goodness she's here for 2 more years. I mean, she puts that ball in the perfect place, and then we have just made sure. I mean, it was Sam Wilson when I first came here, and then it was Kristen Upton for 4 years, and then it was Maddie.
Somebody's getting up on that in that place for that ball.
We'll score corner kicks, and every year we will score and win because of set pieces. And this last year is exactly. I mean, we played F&M here. It was an amazing game. We beat them 2-0 on 2 corner kicks. When we scored against Hopkins to bring them to overtime, it was a free kick. I mean, it's so much of it is set piece based because that's soccer as a whole, which is why we spend so much time.
Yeah.
So it's soccer as a whole. Yeah. So lots.
All right, so you might be the exception to the rule then, in that regard. I mean, just looking data wise, I'm not convinced. Maybe it's because, to your point, right, is how much intentionality do coaches put into their programs around set pieces, and there's one thing about set pieces are going to score goals, and this other thing would be we're going to practice, we're going to have plays, and we're going to do those things. I don't think there's a lot of teams that maybe do that, and as a result, I just don't think that they create the opportunity that I think conceptually people have in their heads of the importance of set plays.
Well, I think again it's based on the data. Like if goals and it's Division I and it's the World Cup, it's every division. That's how you win games. It's how you score goals. It's how you break through. And so our training time is from 4:30 to 6:30 every day. And so at 4:00 we call it pro time. So the girls come out and they work on whatever they want to work on. But it's like that kind of developmental stuff. So the forwards will get in front of the goal. Wingers will do 1v1s wide. Keepers might want some breakaways. Backs work on clearing. Just stuff that we can't always get to. Like there's individual things that you just can't get to while you're getting ready for the next game. And we every single day, players who take corner kicks and score corner kicks every day for at least 15 minutes. So they do at least an hour of corner kick. And I think it's just seeing the ball in. It's putting a perfect ball. So they get an hour of a week, and it doesn't take practice time. We don't take, and we'll work on set pieces as a team as well, but it's the repetition. Because the same players who score our corner kicks are the same players because we didn't concede a single corner kick last year either. So,
oh my God.
The same thing in 2016 is we didn't concede. So if you have these unbelievable players who can score corner kicks, it's the same.
Oh, you use them. I don't. Yeah.
We play a zone plus a man. So those are the 2 players who stand in that zone and win them out the other way too. So it goes both ways. So we don't really ever practice defending corner kicks in terms of just seeing them in, because it's the same exact players. They just work on finishing corner kicks 15 minutes every practice, which in turn means we're working on defending them too. They just play them out the other way.
Huh. Now I'm going to have to rummage through all your data that I can glean from the website just to.
I'll send it to you.
I'll send it. That would be awesome, because like I said, I started looking at it, and again, I think conceptually, I think a lot of coaches know that statistically how important they are, but then I look at individual teams and I'm like, well, if you say it's important, but the data is showing you that it's not you're not scoring goals, or it's not.
But you also have to. The other piece of it, though, is you have to put an emphasis on attacking the end line to earn corner kicks. So
that's a good point, right? Like that becomes you have to build to that corner.
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Or you have to build to that set play.
in
Yeah.
2019, we struggled with that a bit, and you can look at the data and see. So I looked at like, so we have this, and if you had share, I would share it with you here, but um, we basically have it, and it looks at, we go back to maybe 16, 17, 18, 19, 21. How many corner kicks did we earn every year? And a lot of that, the 2019, we did not earn as many corner kicks, and we did not win as many games. Um,
Huh.
we again, and there's no secret. Anyone who really watches us play knows how important our set pieces are, and
Right.
and wingers who work to get to the end line.
Yeah.
Because if we can't have a clean slot, why not get a free corner kick? Like,
Yeah.
You can't if you can't beat someone 1v1 for your own shot. Well, bring them to the end line. Let's have a corner kick.
Let's get another opportunity to do something. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. But that's a great point. Like there is it's not only about the corner kicks. It's about building to the corner kick. And how do you get the corner kick? And sort of once you get it, what do you do with it at that point, right? Like, wow, I could go. There's a rabbit hole. I got to stop digging. Let me ask, what I was going to ask you like how you thought, like what your impressions of the season were, and I'm just going to say, to me, that's a really successful season. Might have had disappointments that you didn't go further in the tournament, but what with that in mind, the 18-2-1, the amount of shutouts, all that, like, what are your expectations for this fall, right? Like, I hate to put the bar so high. Like, you're like, oh my God, how are we going to get there? You know what I mean?
This is, I think, where the COVID year has changed me. So when 2015 first NCAA tournament, I didn't even know how it worked. Honestly, because I played at Bridgewater College. It was a second-year program. We just wanted to make the playoffs. I coached at Ferrum. I was a coach. I didn't even know what the NCAA tournament was. I coached for 5 years hoping to win games, hoping to make the playoffs, hosting a playoff game. That was the NCAA tournament for us down there. We finished in third and got to host the first ever. First, we made the first ever playoffs, and then we got to host the first ever women's soccer playoff game. Like that was
bonus.
The NCAA tournament. So then, when the NCAA tournament, we got to that point and like rankings, and I was like, wait, what's rankings? What are the regions? I don't even know. Like I'm just trying to win some games. Like I really was. Clueless.
You were this, right? Unfortunately, right? You were you're myopic because of the situation.
Then I was this, where then I could only see because you build, you go 15, you make it. 16, you get to the Sweet 16. 17, again, is this bizarre year of this injury of this player who everyone just adores and everyone's playing for her. So even though we got knocked out the first round, like just the fact that we made it because we. I think we were like 8-1, and then we didn't have her for 10 games and went 5-4-1, and then won enough big games that we made it. It was like this really special season, and then 18 and 19, we were great. We had good years. We had good players. We were regionally ranked. We just, didn't make the NCAA tournament, and I just couldn't see the big picture. The bigger picture. And so I really think that I just now started being like, hey, I asked Michael yesterday, what do you think the score of this game is going to be? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen? Right? But I mean, I have expectations again that we're going to be really hard to beat because my keeper's back, my whole back line's back, my 8's back, my 6's back. I think everybody but my 9 and 10. Winger graduated, some depth in our back line graduated. We do have some older players taking a 5th year, so we really only lost 3 because of 5th year. So they would be really hard to beat. But I just have a lot of faith that the girls are going to come in ready for preseason, that we're going to stay in the moment, and we're going to do our best every day. We play the hardest schedule I've ever scheduled. I mean, we open with Virginia Wesleyan and CNU. in Virginia Wesleyan. We play Messiah on the road. Like we still have Hopkins and Gettysburg and Swarthmore and Haverford and F&M and all of them that are already in there. So we play York, who were in the regional rankings last year. So yeah, I mean, it's the hardest schedule we've ever made.
Way to jump right into it. Like, like there's no easy glide, right? Like, hey, let's just cruise for 3 or 4 games.
We basically, so 2018 and 2019, we were good enough that we got to sit and watch the NCAA tournament selection show and didn't make it. And 2019, 2019 was brutal. We had a good year. We finished 5th in the conference. We got knocked out in the 4-5 game to Gettysburg, who did, we think we lost 2-1, and they made the NCAA tournament. And Swarthmore finished 6th in our conference, didn't even make our playoffs because only 5 teams make it.
Yeah.
And they jumped us and we beat them head to head, and they made the NCAA tournament and we didn't. So we played in our conference tournament, and they sat at home, and because of the data, whatever, they made it.
Yeah.
We didn't, even though we had beaten them head to head because of the landscape of the full season. And I basically just told myself, like, I do not ever want to sit and find out based on data, the rankings, the RPI, the head to head, what's more important, and have 5 or 6 people decide if we're going to make the NCAA tournament. Like, I want to decide. Like, we're either going to play these teams and win, or we're going to play these teams and lose. And that's kind of what we went into last year. So last year was our hardest strength of schedule that we'd had up until that point. And then this year, I didn't necessarily sign up for CNU. I just signed up for the Virginia Wesleyan tournament. So because we play Messiah like 2 weeks later. But we're like, bring it. The girls can't wait. Like, it's just an opportunity. So we get a chance to challenge ourselves, and we're going to play some really great teams. Our expectation is not to win every game. The expectation is, like, do our best in this moment, because that's the only way. Like, otherwise it's just not, I've learned it's just not fun if you keep looking at what's going to happen, what's going to happen. It's just like,
you keep gaming the future. Oh my gosh, you go crazy.
That's what I did. So my expectations are we're going to be really, really hard to beat, just like going in, like last year, that was my expectation. We're going to be really hard to beat. But, to win a soccer game, especially in the Centennial Conference, a lot of things have to line up. And so, I think I can trust that the team is doing everything in their power right now to make sure those things line up. And, I'm just excited to see where we're at come August 17th.
You mentioned Messiah. Are you there? Are you traveling to Messiah?
Yeah, we travel there. Oof. So we'll play Virginia Wesleyan CNU at Wesleyan because it's their tournament, and then I think the next week we play Randolph-Macon in York, and then we play Messiah after that.
The Messiah, right? Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
It's emblazoned everywhere. Everything I see from them, it's iron sharpens iron, and that's very true. You don't become a good team, like I said before. To be the best, you got to play the best. There's very few of those that get lucky and go all the way, and that way. So
and I heard Alice, who I just think is just the best, right? So I listened to her. I think she gave a speech at some point. I don't know where I heard it. I watch all the stuff, and she said when she was young in her career, she got to that point too. Like, let's just do it. Let's just schedule it and see what happens. And I mean, we've always played a solid schedule. We've been ranked in the region, but this allowed us to. My goal was to be in the top 25 and stay in the top 25, and then we've been consistently in and out of the top 25 over the last couple years. So then it was, how do we get into the top 10? And that's what we did this year. And now it's how we stay in the top 10, which again, I don't know where we will be, but I know that the only way,
unless you do it, unless you try it, and unless you put that out there, you're never going to get there. I always, I think there, in some respects, you do have to put these things out there and be like, team, that's what we're gunning for, right? And that's what we want to do.
Yeah, and after I played for 4 years at Bridgewater. We didn't win a championship. I coached for 5 years at Ferrum, didn't win a championship. And this was my 10th season, ninth season, but, I say 10th.
Yeah.
And we finally win championship. I read something over COVID, and I've shared this with the team. So I read something about this. It was like one of those what drives winning or I don't know where I got it. But it's about this woman who was a fighter, like wanted to do like what is it, UFC fighting or whatever.
Yeah.
And
tough chick, as I would call her then. Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't a sport for women yet. So it wasn't a sport for women. And she would go to this gym every day, and she would work at this men's kind of gym every day, and train. And there was no sport for her. It didn't exist for women, and she kind of just told herself, as long as I keep trying, then when this happens, I will, I'll be ready. And for some reason that struck me. I think the idea of Andy Reid also in the NFL, because we've won a regular season here, we've made the Sweet 16, like we've had a lot of success, but it's so hard just to make our playoffs. I don't go in every year saying we got to win a championship. It's can we make our playoffs, and then can we get into the 2-3 seed, and then you still have a 4-5 game, and then it's can you maybe win the regular season. So, but it really struck a chord because it was just like, and that's kind of what I've just told myself with my career is as long as I keep trying, and now the next thing to keep trying for is can we do it again, and can we stay in the top 10. And can we maybe make the Final Four? Because I didn't know if we'd ever make the Sweet 16. I never knew if we'd make an NCAA tournament. So it's really just like, let's just keep trying and be in the moment so that we can enjoy whatever season we have. But why not keep trying? Because it's gotten us this far, just us trying.
Yeah. One of the other things I've learned talking to all the coaches I've had is the notion of purpose. Mm-hmm. Right, and that teams have to have a purpose to move towards. The successful ones have a purpose, and so all the things that they do is aim, like it comes to that pinnacle point. What is our purpose? Right. And that could be a goal, that could be how you want to be, but it's that purpose, and if that gives that purpose to be like. We're aiming to get it up above that bar. We want to get to the Elite Eight, or we want to get to the quarter, whatever that is. Right. Like that purpose can bind a team together with that drive. And if you have that right, it's a combination of like 50 things all at once, perfectly coming in, right? Like you have the injury, oh dang, you're done, right? Like
I think this year, so the senior class this year. Hadn't made the NCAAs. So they were the 18 and 19 class that got to watch the selection. Didn't make it. And, I think they just decided before the season started. Like I can't decide that for them because I don't get to play anymore. They just decided. And so the way that they led, the way that they carried themselves, they watched so many games. Like half my team drove down to Hopkins to watch Hopkins play TCNJ just because they wanted to see two of the best teams in the country play. I didn't go. I watched it online. They drove down there to watch that game live. So we just had a team that just decided that we were just going to do it. And you have to have the talent, obviously, to go along with that. But you can have talent and not get there. But it just felt like from the beginning that it was just, it didn't mean we had to win every game to get there. It was nice to be able to do it that way, but they just decided that they were going to do it this year. And they acted accordingly. It wasn't like they wanted it and then something went wrong and then everything.
And they talked about it, and they first sign of adversity, they kind of like, well, forget that one, right? Like
they managed everything. I didn't have to lead that much. I didn't have to do any extra. Like I didn't have to do anything extra. They did it. It was their team. It wasn't my team and Michael's team. It was their team, and that's the difference.
Remarkable. Hey, I could continue talking about this stuff, but I'm cognizant of your time. But can we talk a little bit about recruiting before we wrap it up? I just have some generic questions. I'm going to say, just based on our conversation, that I think I know the answer to this, and especially as you talked about your recruiting process and the particular types of students or student athletes that you're looking for. But I'm sure you're familiar with the websites that help students get recruited, the NCSA, and there's a bunch of others, but the NCSA one is always the one I'm most familiar with. But do you use those at all? Are they part of your recruiting process, or are you much more hands-on? I want to see, I want to talk, I want to do all those things.
Yeah, I think we actually use it for leads.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good place to start, just to get your name out there, because it's just so many players in that database McDaniel's a small school, so how many people really know about us? So it's a good place to start for leads, but essentially, we need to see you play. We want to see you on your club team. We want to get you to ID clinics. We want to get you on campus. So it's a good place to start, but it's, it's a good place to start. And it's nice that they have film up. So if there's players, who live further away, that it's just an access where if someone emails me, I can go and check them out real quick and don't have to even ask for them. So there's definitely pieces of it that we use, but more as a starting point.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Are you a big fan of showcases, or not so much? Or
yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where with our sport, it's necessary, because ID clinics, that's the big piece of it as well. But players are going to play better on their club team. And, you have an ID clinic, you have 50 players here, we can get a really good evaluation of all of them, but the level of play is very different across the board. Where if you go to the showcase tournament, well, it's you see a lot of good on good, or at least equal against equal. So, so that's a huge part of our recruiting. I mean, I think it's a shame, again, the direction that it's gone, where you got to travel all over the country to be able to play soccer, just because it leaves out a whole group of people. But it certainly it's crucial that the ID clinics, they're crucial, because again, you've got to the only way you can play for us, if you have this athletic and technical ability, the only way to gauge that is to see you play as much as possible. We can't hold an ID clinic, can't hold ID clinics every other week here. We can go to tournaments every other week in the off season.
Yeah. Have you taken players just strictly because of video? And this is a question I'm really curious, right? Like, somebody can't get to the ID clinic, whatever, doesn't play on one of those teams, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Like a couple of your players.
Usually COVID obviously I think has made every coach more, before, I'd look at film, but I'm like, I want to see you play in person. Well, COVID, we weren't even able to travel. Some coaches, we weren't even allowed to travel. So showcases were going on. I wasn't allowed to go. So we really relied on film. One of our All-Americans, my first All-American here, she's from Oregon, and so she sent film over. She just fell in our lap my first year. So I came here.
Tough. That's a tough one.
She fell in our lap because she had a Division I school puller, last minute puller, and so she was looking for a place to play. And another really good Division III school didn't guarantee her a roster spot, and she didn't want to risk that. So. They might be kicking themselves when she ended up being an All-American for us, but. So that we had a player from Colorado, but again, we kind of looked at it the same way. So watched her play on film, said, hey, here's a couple of adjustments we need to see as you develop. 3 months later, she sent us some more film. So we tried to do it where we watched her develop through film. But it's not ideal. It's usually only because they aren't as local and we can't get to them. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job. If they're anywhere in this region, I should be able to see them play live.
I gotta believe, right? Your record, the quality of your program, your recruiting sort of area might have expanded a little bit, or right? You're starting to attract players. Again, Oregon is just an example, right? Where, hey, look, you got a that might have been a different circumstance, but now they're like, oh, McDaniel's one of the top schools, soccer schools out there.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, I
I
think
should look at that.
generally we're still like a regional based school in terms of
Hmm.
the school makeup. We're usually, New York down to North Carolina, all the states in between. We always have someone on our team for the most part every year, every other year. We've had Seattle, we've had Oregon, we've had California, Colorado, um, Florida. But now, with the success this past year, we've opened it up a little bit. Even our ID clinics, we're getting kids in from Texas and Illinois and Florida.
Wow. Yeah.
One of our commits already is from Florida. So we are definitely. We said if there's a year to do it. So Michael and I, we had a conversation and tried to be intentional about it. It's let's see if we can shoot further outside the region because it opens up to more players. So we'll see what the success. We'll see if we can yield. Yield. The interest is there. Then it's about the yield, right? Like, so we're getting the interest. It's just is it going to be the right fit?
Yeah. What are you? I know it's difficult for you probably to get to him, but are you a fan of high school soccer or not? Do you use? I mean, it's hard to recruit there, but
yeah, I mean, we don't really get to games because it's just with our season, it's impossible. And now that I'm a mom, like it just
yeah, no, that ain't
I
happening.
mean, I'm not getting my son as much as I want to already, so it's just not going to happen. I'm a fan of high school soccer though because with all the showcase stuff, like so much of it is showcase. Kids are playing to be seen by colleges, right? They're playing because we're all sitting there. And I like the idea of high school because they're playing to win championships, right? And so I think there's a competitive aspect to go with it, but I also think, club training usually happens twice a week, and then maybe you play one game or two games on the weekends. Where high school, it's you train or play 5 days in a row, and there's nothing that replicates college training. I would. It doesn't even matter if your high school's good or not, but you're physically active playing soccer for 90 minutes to 2 hours a day. That's hard to replicate. So I like the fact that just getting your bodies physically prepared for playing 6 days a week in college. I think if nothing else, even if your team loses every game and you don't like your coach or whatever it may be, the fact that you're playing 5 days in a row, and sometimes with high school now it's 6 with Saturday games. Yeah. It's the only thing that replicates the training every day in college. Yeah. So that's the biggest thing. I mean, I love my high school sport, so it was a joy. So so I'm a fan of anything. I'm a fan of soccer. So if you got a place to go play, go play. I love soccer. I'm not going to recruit you off your high school team, but go and play and just have another place to find joy in the game.
Yeah, I always just say, and I'm a volunteer assistant at Montgomery High School here, but I always just say I think there's something about the emotion of the game that is absent in the club game. When you're playing in front of your friends, the teachers, and to a certain extent it does replicate college soccer much more than I think a club game, because I mentioned this earlier. It's just, to me, it ends up being a little bit too bland, emotionally bland. Like, you're up for a game, it's a game you're playing, and so you're up for it, but it doesn't have that underlying, I hate these guys, because they're my rival team, school or whatever. So, hey, last question, and I'll let you get on with your day. This has been fantastic. This has been a great discussion. But the players that you recruit, what would you say is there's a gap in their ability as a player, and as a person, all those things between high school and their freshman year. Like, what do you think that gap is in terms of their soccer ability or what have you, that they have to learn to succeed at McDaniel, I'll just say freshman year, or their 4 years?
Yeah, I think speed of play, the physical nature of the game, and probably the tactics. So, we're very specific about how we play. So you've got to be able to fall into that. And I think part of that too is like, you might be the best forward, but you have to defend. So like the defensive tactics that go along with every position. I think again, the physical nature, whether it's fitness and just the physical body to body on the field, the size of players, the tactics of, I mean, we have players again at Sarah McDonald, our freshman year, good player, and she's a good little player. We have two Sarah McDonalds. One is the goalkeeper, and then one is the field player. And Sarah, good player, excited about her, came in, just struggled to understand what we needed from her, and we worked with her, and she didn't get much playing time. She was kind of one of those developing players, and we got to those ECAC tournament, and it was a game where we were winning by a number of goals. She got to go in, and it's like a light bulb went off. She was in the right spots. She was, making adjustments. She was making us better. And then she probably played half of the semifinal and half of the final. And that was like the last 3 games of her freshman year. So it like took her to literally the end of her freshman year to understand how to play, even though she was good enough to play all year. It just, if you're not in the right positions in our system, it just doesn't work. So, but it's a learning curve. Some players can come in and adjust right away. Some need a whole year. Some need a year and a half to put it all together. The physical part, the tactics part, and just that speed of play and vision.
Okay, Coach, this was awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation. We went down some rabbit holes that I really enjoyed. So, just thank you very much for your time and knowing how busy you are as a recently new mom, and really do appreciate it.
Yeah,
so,
thanks.
We'll definitely connect at some point during the season. I was sort of already checking out. Hey, can I get down there for a game? You got some humdingers on your schedule. That would be fun.
I can't wait.
So, all right, Coach. Thank you very much.